Relations between President Obama and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu appear to have hit a new low, while the collapse of Yemen's government is likely to make the U.S. fight against terror an even tougher challenge. Here now, Congressman Adam Schiff, ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, and Jon Huntsman, former governor, U.S. ambassador, and Republican presidential candidate. Governor, let me start with you. You're a civility guy. You're the co-chair of No Labels.
I'm a results guy, a problem solver.
Nothing wrong with that, and so too is Congressman Schiff.
Yes, he is.
But with regard to what's just taken place on this extension of an invite to Bibi Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu, I say to myself, did partisanship just jump into the realm of foreign policy?
Well, it's unfortunate. First of all, the Prime Minister has a very important message to bring to the American people. I think there's nothing more important right now than the nuclear development in Iran and the implications for the region and the world. But he's beloved in Congress, and he can speak anytime he wants. But the way in which the invitation took place, the partisanship kind of slipping into foreign policy, I think is a really bad precedent. It's bad statecraft, it's bad politics, and I think it's going to put a real damper on what traditionally is the head of state to head of state relationship. That governs foreign policy, and it will for some time. And I think that that has been forgotten in all of this.
And Congressman, should those who oppose the way in which this was handled, who are in Congress, perhaps yourself, nevertheless attend that address when it takes place in March?
Yes, we should, but I agree completely with the governor. I think this was a terrible mistake by the Speaker. It used to be at least the goal that politics ended at the water's edge. Now it only begins there. And I think for us to extend an invitation 2 weeks before the Israeli election gives Israelis the impression we're trying to meddle in their politics. And I also find it extraordinary that a world leader would be invited before the Congress effectively to lobby in favor of a bill that the president opposes. I just think it's harmful to the U.S. Israel relationship, and I think it was a very ill-considered decision by the Speaker.
In your capacity as a former United States ambassador, indeed to China, what kind of a precedent has just been set here?
Well, I can't remember historically where this has ever happened before, so I can't point to you where this has happened. I think the implications are fairly profound. I think it's going to impact the head of state to head of state dynamic in a relationship that is terribly important. The U.S. and Israel have a very important and special relationship. We have regional matters to take care of. We have a free trade agreement. We're close people to people. And the Iron Dome cooperation has been very good recently, so there's a lot to champion in the relationship. And I have to think that this is not representative of a good trend between the two of us.
Congressman Schiff, in your capacity as a member of the Intel Committee, allow me to ask a question about Yemen. It seems as if Yemen is the Afghanistan of pre-September 11. In other words, this now is ground zero for the terrorist activity. What is it about Yemen? What was it about Afghanistan? I ask that question so that we can anticipate what will become the next breeding ground for al-Qaeda and ISIL.
Well, Afghanistan is a very good abject lesson for us. Many people are urging us to move in a more full-throated way into Yemen. We've seen after a massive occupation, a very long occupation of Afghanistan, that a large American troop presence on the ground is not necessarily the answer. So I think there is a natural and understandable resistance to jumping too hard, too fast. And for that reason, I think a lot of the criticism of the president is wrong-headed. At the same time, there is a very real risk here if the Houthis try to run this country, that you could see a dynamic take place, much like we saw in Iraq, where if the Sunni tribes in Yemen feel that they're being ruled by a Shia clan with the support of Iran, they're going to be thrown into the arms of AQAP. And this will be an opportunity, undoubtedly, for al-Qaeda to exploit. And so there are certainly some lessons to be considered in Afghanistan, but there are also some very vibrant warning signs about the course of action in Iraq recently that we need to pay attention to in Yemen.
You need a scorecard, gentlemen, to keep track of what's going on in the Middle East. Iran is an enemy in many respects, yet joining us in a battle against ISIS, yet supporting the Houthis in Yemen. What I often hear from people is they say, there's nothing we can do about it. We ought to stay the heck out of it. There's an isolationist trend, I think, in the country, Governor. You would say what to those folks?
Well, I would say that's a very bad trend. There is a role for the United States because good governments don't exist right now in the region. So what gives rise to a lot of the bad behavior and a lot of the transnational problems we're experiencing? It's illegitimate regimes. So whether it's Libya, whether it's Syria, whether it's Iraq, whether it's now Yemen, Saudi Arabia is now going through a new transition with the new king. They've got to look look at the region and say things are not working so well for us. Where does the world look for the kind of leadership and the kind of capacity building that can work and lead toward legitimate governments? I'm not sure that there are too many other places other than the United States, so there is a role for us to play, not only on the security side, and I'm not talking about more troops into the old places where we've been in the past, but we do need to secure the environment such that our interests are protected, and we do have to work with the local regimes in building capacity toward legitimate, good, transparent governments. That's the problem today, and that's leading to ungoverned territories where you see the bad behavior take place, and I think a lot of the bad behavior generally that we're seeing in the region.
Congressman Schiff, as you well know, the president cutting short his visit to India so that he can pay respects in Saudi Arabia. I get the impression that that is more than I happen to be in the neighborhood. Speak to the relationship with the Saudis, please, and its importance.
Well, it's a key relationship, and I'm glad the president is making the trip. I think it's a very good call. Saudi Arabia is in a period of transition in its leadership. Happily, it looks like that the new leadership will carry on many of the policies, the close relationship with the United States that we would like to see, and I think that's very positive. In particular, the Deputy Crown Prince Mohammed bin Nayef is very Western educated, close to the United States, very strong in counterterrorism efforts. So I think there'll be a continuity in the relationship that's important at a time when Saudi Arabia is under enormous strain, with Iran reaching a greater influence in places like Yemen through the Houthis, and places like Damascus, in Iraq as well. So Saudi Arabia feels very beleaguered at the moment. It's an extraordinarily important relationship with the United States. And these personal matters, like the president's trip, really have an impact. So this is an important relationship. And one last point I would make on that is Saudi Arabia is going to be critical in not only cutting off some of the financing to groups like ISIL, but also in attacking the ideological struggle going on, condemning the perversion of Islam that we see in ISIL. Saudi Arabia is one of the leading authorities in terms of Islam, as well as the Sunni leadership in the region, and so they're going to play a vital role.
And finally, I'd be derelict in my duty if I didn't ask you, MIT 3.0, can that dog hunt?
We'll see. The technology has not yet been developed.
Well said. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your being here.